Welcome to the Tennis Hackery podcast. This is episode number 28. This is the place where we discuss all things about tennis that relate to the fundamentals, fitness, and the mind aspect of the game. This is episode 28, and this is a very, very special episode because we have a very, very, very special guest. I will let Craig Lazarchik do the honors. Craig, please take it away.
Thank you, Tarun. Our Tennis Hackery family would like to welcome 17-time Grand Slam champion, two-time Olympic gold medalist, and International Tennis Hall of Famer, Gigi Fernandez. Welcome, Gigi.
Thrilled to be here.
Yay. Well, before we get into the nuts and bolts of tennis philosophies, Gigi, give us a broad scope of your Gigi tennis journey to this point.
Wow. Well, I'm 61 years old, so that could take a while. But roughly, I started playing tennis around 3 because my brothers played and I wanted to be like them. And I kept asking for lessons, and my parents wouldn't give them to me until I was 7 years old. And I did not have success right away. I lost my first match 6-0, 6-0. But I grew up in Puerto Rico, and I didn't really have any role models. There was not another professional athlete, female athlete in any sport, not just tennis. So I didn't really have anybody to look up to that I wanted to say I want to be like her. And also had a lot of I don't know what the word is, but I had a lot of resistance from the coaches in Puerto Rico because they didn't think girls were strong enough to hit topspin. So this is the late 70s, early 80s when Borg started playing and brought topspin to the game. And before that, it was all slices, right? So they wouldn't teach me topspin. So I had a successful junior career in that I had no competition in Puerto Rico. So I was number one in my age group and two above. But because the Puerto Rico Tennis Association was part of the USTA Tennis Association, I could come to the United States in the summer and play summer nationals. And I was discovered by a couple of coaches there, offered a scholarship. Ended up going to Clemson University. And when I showed up at Clemson, I had a slice forehand and a slice backhand. And that was my game. I didn't hit flat. I was sort of starting to hit a little flat on my forehand, but not really. So as a freshman at Clemson University, I played number 2 on the team. And it's the first time in my life that I played tennis every day. First time. So my game went like this. I was improved like dramatically. Made the finals of NCAAs, learned to hit topspin forehand throughout my freshman year. The girl that I lost to, Beth Herr from USC, was ranked 27th in the world, was the number one college player. Ranked 27th in the world, but back in this is 1983, and there was no computers or cell phones or internet, so you could verify that information. So I'm not quite sure I believed her, but I'm kind of flipping through the channels. 6 weeks later, I see her playing center court Wimbledon against Billie Jean King in the round 16, and she's beating her. And that's when I went, oh, I had a match point on her, lost 7-6 in the third. So I thought this could be, I could maybe have a career. So I went back to my coach and I said, okay, I'll come back if you guarantee that I'll play number 1 on the team, because I'd played number 2. And I only lost 2 or 3 matches all year as a number 2 player. And the girl who was playing number 1 was returning senior, but she lost first round and I made the finals in NCAA. So I figured I'd earned my number 1 spot. But he said I was going to have to play a challenge match.
Wow.
And I didn't want to take a chance on a challenge match. So I took the fall off. And after the fall, back then, the Australian Open was on grass in November at Kooyong. So it's the last Grand Slam of the year. Yeah. And my favorite, because of my attacking style, was my best surface. So I went there and I had a couple of good results. And when that tour ended, I was 85 in the world in singles and top 50 in doubles. So then I decided that I would turn pro. So I turned pro in 83, and then 4 years into my career, I was going to quit because I was not being successful. I was being moderately successful. I was, certainly at this time, if you weren't top 15 or 20 in the world, you weren't making a living. So I was kind of barely getting by. My dad, fortunately, was a doctor, could help. But I just wasn't happy with the overall, my overall results. So I told my agent I was going to quit. This is the summer of 88. And he says, okay, but before you quit, why don't you go meet Dr. Jim Lair? And I was like, oh, okay, fine. I hadn't heard of him. And so I spent the summer, a couple of sessions with him. And he taught me what to do with the time in between points, which is critical because, as we know, 83% of the time that you're playing a point, I don't know if you know this, but the average time of a ATP Tour match, 83% of the time the pros are playing, they're not actually playing a point. So when I get asked what the percentage of tennis is mental, I say 83% is mental, because at the time you're not actually playing a point, so you're in your head. So he taught me some very set sequence of steps to do with that time. And then he also did something that was brilliant. He asked me if I could act. And I said, well, I don't know. I mean, maybe I had the acting gene, because Jose Ferrer was my great uncle. He was an Academy Award winner in the 50s. So he said, I want you to act like you're having fun. I want you to just pretend and try to fool everybody in the crowd. I want them to see that girl playing, thinking, wow, that girl's having a good time. And you and I know that you hate it and you're going to quit after this match. So let's just make it our secret. So I said, fine, I'll try it. So I played the first match and I won that match 6-4 in the third. Came off the court and he said, did you have any fun? I was like, no. I mean, tennis after full on the third, as you all know, because you're all tennis players, it's very stressful after full on the third. Every point is huge and it's just not a lot of fun. So he said, okay, we'll do it the next match. So I did it next match and won that. Did it again, won that. Did it again, won that. Now I'm in the semifinals of the US Open and we're playing the best team in the history of tennis, male or female, which is Martina Navratilova and Pam Shriver, 21 Grand Slams. They had just finished a 108 match win streak. Think of that. 3 years. They didn't lose for 3 straight years. They just lost it at Wimbledon, and now we're playing at the US Open against them, and really had no chance, no business getting anywhere near beating them. But I guess what, we beat them. We made the finals of the US Open, and then we won the next match. So I ended up winning the US Open, and I thought, oh my God, if I could just figure out what's going on in here, if I just fool myself into thinking that I was having a good time. So obviously that was kind of life-changing, because I went from going to quit to go, I was going to go back to medical school, which was my other calling. And the rest is history. I went on to win, 17 Grand Slams, and not linear, it wasn't all easy right away, but that was 88. And then by 91, I was the number one doubles player in the world. From 91 to 97, I was the number one doubles player in the world, and retired in 97. As the number one doubles team in the world. And I wanted to retire on top. I didn't want to go through that decline that players went through. So I made that decision that I probably have regretted for a while. But, back then it was 33 was old. It's going to be 34. And I was old back then. And I was having a hard time getting motivated for anything other than the Grand Slams. I was still, the year I retired, I won the French, won Wimbledon, made the finals of the US Open, and then retired. But the other tournaments, I wasn't getting the results. I just couldn't get motivated. So, in hindsight, I should have taken 6 months off or 3 months off, and then kind of seen how I felt. But, life, I was in a new relationship, and Natasha didn't want to play with me anymore, which was a big part of the reason that I didn't want to start with a new partner. So, I'm kind of blabbing away, but I'll tell you one more story and then I'll let you ask me another question. So at the end of 96, Natasha and I had stopped playing together. We decided that was going to be our last year. And the biggest mistake that I made in my career was, at that point, I could pick a partner for 97. I didn't know it was going to be my last year on tour, but Natasha and I stopped playing 96, and I have the choice of partners because I'm number one in the world. I can play with whoever I want. And my options were Arantxa Sanchez Vicario and Martina Hingis. And we had narrowed it down to those two. Martina Hingis I had played with earlier in the year. We won a tournament in Hamburg. It was like her first tour title, or maybe the year before, but she was still very young. She hadn't won anything, nothing, like zero, just maybe a couple of doubles titles, but no idea that she was going to turn into the player she became. And then Arantxa was established. She was one of my main competitors, and I knew that she was going to be good under pressure. And I chose her. Unfortunately, we were both outside players. So one of us had to go to the do side, and neither one of us was comfortable on that side. So if I had picked Hingis, I probably would have played 4 or 5 more years, because she went on to win. Actually, she went on to make the 4 finals that year. Didn't win any, but she ended up having obviously an amazing career. So then what happened, I started playing with Arantxa and it wasn't working. And then in April, we kind of, through another story, found out that she was going to not play with me at the French Open. And so I went back to Natasha and I said, okay, Natasha, just finish this year with me and I'll retire at the end of the year. So we played and won the French Wimbledon, made the finals of the US Open. And I said to her, listen, we're 4 Grand Slams away from tying Martina and Pam for, best team in the history of tennis, or 5, however many. And we were winning 2 or 3 a year. So I'm like, I can hang in there for a couple more years. But she didn't want to. She wanted to go play with Lindsay Davenport, which, no hard feelings. Lindsay was a great doubles player and she's a good friend. And obviously an amazing player, Hall of Famer, but not a good doubles partner for Natasha because there was no finisher. They were both baseline or setters. There was nobody really overly aggressive. So that's kind of what happened. And so I retired, and then should I keep going, or do you want to stop and ask me anything? I'm like blabbing away
I have
here.
a few
No,
questions
no, no.
coming up,
Yeah.
but you can
Okay.
definitely
Yeah.
continue if
Please
you want
finish your
to.
train
Well,
of thought. This is
why don't we
incredible.
stop there, and then I'll answer questions about my career, and then I'll tell you what I was doing after my career. I
Okay.
think.
Well,
Otherwise, it'll be too many.
the first question that I really wanted to ask you was, if you were slicing both your forehand and your backhand, I can imagine that being such a huge change. Like,
Yeah.
who helped you, or how was that process? Because that was in
Yeah,
college,
it's a
right?
good question. Yeah. So my coach in college, his name was Andy Johnston, and he was a pretty good, decent coach. He taught me, obviously the topspin forehand. The topspin backhand, I started working on it the summer after I finished my freshman year. I did not hit topspin in college. I hit only slice
Wow.
backhands. Then I started to learn the topspin backhand. Pedro Gonzalez from Puerto Rico, he used to be the Ohio State University women's coach, and Beth Herr, coincidentally, who had been in the finals, was they were friendlier friends, and Beth and I became friends and ended up playing doubles together on tour. So he taught me the slice backhand, and then it was just a process. My topspin backhand was my best shot. It took, but
Wow.
it's something I learned and had to work, while on tour. So something you absolutely cannot do today. You cannot turn pro if you don't have a full game, right? It's different era, different times.
Yes.
So I never had the confidence in my ground strokes that I've needed to be a top singles player. That's always attribute why I was so good at doubles. And I was top 17, and my highest ranking was 17 in singles, and I was top 30 most of my career. But I didn't have the baseline. I didn't have the grounded baseline where I could hang in there on a baseline rally with the big hitters, over and over again. I just had to come to the net. So what happened when the power hitters came, when Celis came around and Graf came around, I struggled because with Celis more than Graf I could still attack her backhand, and she would slice it and I would still be able to hit a volley. But here comes Monica Celis, who's standing 3 feet inside the baseline to return serve, and I'm serving and volleying, and I'm getting 2 steps in and the return's coming back, right? So I couldn't hang in the baseline because I didn't have that.
Yeah, that
that
makes no
I've hit a
sense.
million ground strokes.
Makes total sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Gigi, you mentioned that you spent a summer kind of redeveloping your mental aspects and approach to the game. How do you translate that to how you teach now? What experiences can you take from being a player and relate them to club players who you're trying to help as adults?
I don't think that being mentally tough really, trying to think if I really use that when I'm teaching. Not really, because teaching is kind of selfless. It's really about them. It's not about me. I don't have to, I'm just teaching, right? I'm just kind of passing on my knowledge. I don't need to perform at a high level, which is what I needed to do when I was playing. I needed to perform at a high level under pressure. And that's what the mental part is. It's like, how do you control your thoughts so that you can play your best tennis when the pressure is highest? And the other thing that I did that was very critical in my development was a few years later, I went to the Deepak Chopra Center in Lancaster, Massachusetts, summer of '92, and I was invited by Martina Navratilova and Chris Everett, Martina Navratilova and Billie Jean King, sorry, to go train with them leading up to the European tour. And I didn't know, I had no idea what they were talking about. Like, who's Deepak Chopra? What's Ayurvedic message? What's transcendental meditation? No clue. I'm a Catholic girl from Puerto Rico. But I figured, how bad could it be to train with Martina and Billie Jean King, right? Going to this European tour. So we did that. I spent like 10 days there, and it was just magical. Like, the first time in my life that I really learned about relaxing and I learned how to breathe properly, diaphragmatic breathing. Spent a lot of time doing breathing exercises and learned transcendental meditation, and it changed my life. Really learning to meditate changed my life. I went from, that was in April, and I won the French Open in June, Wimbledon in July, the US Open in September, the Championship in October. I forgot the gold medal in August in Barcelona. Yes. September, then the Championship in November, and the Australian Open within 8 months. period after learning how to meditate, won 6 Grand Slams in a row.
Wow.
So those skills I use in daily life. I meditate still if I'm nervous, or when the planes are taking off. I still get really nervous traveling. So I try to meditate. When my daughter's playing soccer, I meditate. So I use kind of some of those skills. What meditation teaches you is the skill of changing one thought for another, removing the judgment and the emotion. So on the tennis court, you can imagine how magical that is. So if you could not have judgment or emotion about your game and what you're doing, because we're so self-critical when we play tennis. If you learn how to remove that criticism and just change your one thought for the other, and it was usually the thought was I have to win the next point. I played my best tennis when all I thought was I have to win the next point. If you ever play a match and all you think about, anybody listening, try to play a match and think nothing but I have to win the next point. It's almost impossible because you're going to think of the score, you're going to think of what you should be doing and this and that and the other. But if you just think I have to win the next point and the score, you got to keep track of the score. Fortunately, we had umpires, right? So they could call it out and I didn't have to think about it. But you probably play your best tennis because those are your only thoughts.
Yeah. I love that you said that with meditation. So you would advise adults, recreational players, juniors, pros, anyone really, meditation?
I mean, if you're serious about performance, I think for recreational players, it depends on how serious they are about. Some people just want to go have fun and they're not super competitive or super motivated to be the best. And that's fine. That's totally fine. Tennis is, a great sport that provides different platforms for different people. Some people want to win nationals. Well, if you want to win nationals, you learn how to meditate. But if you're just happy to go play with your friends in the club socially, then you definitely don't need to learn how to meditate, right? But for juniors who are aspiring, absolutely. And anybody who wants to live life at a high level, I think it's definitely a great tool to have in your toolkit.
I love that. I've actually done a course from Deepak Chopra, so I like that you mentioned him.
Yeah.
That's fantastic, Gigi. I mean, we could listen to you for hours and hours on this. And honestly, like so much of it is so relevant, at least in some of our tennis journey too, from whether it's like one of our things in Tennis Hackery that we do, the three spheres or factors we look at are mindset, of course, the fundamentals and the fitness, right? And they all play such a large part in tennis. And Alex and I were having a debate as like, in terms of percentage, how important is mental or how important is fitness? I think they're all very, very important. And to me, like since I train a lot of juniors who are playing tournaments, mental is like huge, like fitness, like and we keep tweaking our fundamentals and, finesse and whatever, like on a daily basis. But certain things are like innate, like, fitness or, how you think mentally. And, there's a 3-second rule or 5-second rule, like you think about a point, then you get it, and then you come. It's the Roger Federer thing that he says, right?
Yeah, so I have a very specific sequence of thoughts. If you wanted me to share them, I call it the CRAVE sequence, and CRAVE stands for chill, routines, analyze, visualize, execute. So when a point ends, you chill. Whether you won the loss or point to point or lost the point, you got to chill. Not one point is that important in tennis, and I can argue that till I'm blue in the face. The only point that matters is match point. Every other point is irrelevant. Like best player in the world, Roger Federer, or one of the best players in the history of tennis, won 54% of all the points he played. He was a loser 46% of the time, right? Rafa Nadal, Carlitos Alcaraz just won the French Open. Yannick Sinner won one more point than he did.
Yes, that's right.
It's crazy. Our sport is crazy. So whether you win or lose it, just let it go. So that's chills. Then you start your routines, and routines, they're personal for everybody. Everybody's different. Where do you step? Do you step on the line? Do you not? Where are your eyes? Usually on the racket, etc. Then you analyze what happened the last point. Just think about why you won it, why you lost it, what you did that worked or didn't work. And then you think about, what am I going to do the next point? And as you're doing this, you're walking around doing your routine, you get to the line and the V is visualize. You want to have a quick visualization before the point starts. And then the last thing is you have to execute. Now, to execute, you have to have what I call trigger words. And trigger words are words in my head that I repeated that would elicit some response. Like, for example, on my serve, I knew that under pressure, my left arm was going to come down a little bit too soon and the ball was going to hit the tape. And so my last thought when I served was left arm up. So I'm bouncing the ball. My last thought, visual, I see myself hitting a great serve, and then I'm going left arm up. Now, that had a triple benefit. First, I'm keeping my left arm up because I'm saying left arm up. Second, because I'm thinking left arm up, I can't think something I don't want to think, like don't double fault. And third, and probably most important, is because I'm thinking left arm up on the first point, the second point, the third point, the 10th point, and the match point. All points are the same. Match point does not have any more significance than the first or the third or the fifth point. So, so that was sort of those were my thoughts between points. And when I was being really good about it, I had my best results. Of course, I was not always perfect, but always striving to do that.
That's so good to hear. And I have a match later on tonight, so I will definitely make sure that I remember those things.
Well, I mean, so you have to practice this,
Of
not
course.
in a match.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
between us, we usually talk about how important practice is, right?
Yeah.
It's like sometimes you take practice very seriously, and that's what we tell our juniors, like take practice seriously so that,
Yeah.
the match becomes almost second nature. But
yeah, I mean, if you don't practice serious, you're never going to play well because you're not going to play better than you practice. Like no one.
That's totally
exactly
right.
Exactly. And
by some miracle of God, you're going to play better than you practice. It ain't happening.
Yeah. And just to extend that thought into the next segment, I was listening to one of your videos where you talk about how do you eliminate 75% of the doubles errors with the Gigi method, and want to kind of get into that. I heard a term called PEST, positioning, execution, shot selection, and tactical. And there's this fascinating diagram that I was looking at where you talk about positioning, court coverage, the serve, the return, the shot selection, and they're so huge in terms of when you're playing competitive tennis. So, I would like the audience to learn a little bit from you at a high level on what the GG method is, how to utilize it, how do we practice, and how do we incorporate that into our sessions.
Yeah, well, it would take 3 hours to go over all of it, because I do have it online. But so the GG method is divided into 5 steps. And they're all surrounded by competition because in the end, that's what we want. We want to compete at a high level. The first step is positioning. You got to be standing in the right spot. You have to understand court coverage, which is based on where you are on the court and where your opponents are on the court. Are you 2 up, 2 back, or 1 up, 1 back? Where is everybody and who covers what shot? The third is serve tactics. Of course, you have to have serve strategies to hold serve, and then the fourth step is return. You have to have return strategies to break your opponent's serve. And the last one is shot selection, understanding what is high percentage shot selection. And what the great players do consistently is employ high percentage shot selection and stick to it under pressure. I think that was set Natasha and I apart. I mean, every time the ball came, I had 4, 5, 6, or 7 choices for that shot. Every single time the ball came, I could do 7 different things with that ball. And the mental discipline of hitting the high percentage shot, which is typically the boring shot, it's never the crowd pleaser. Yeah. The crowd pleaser is the 7th option. And, I would pull them off. Yes. If you're up 3-1 40 love and you're, feeling super comfortable, try the crowd pleaser. Don't try it at break point. Right. And that's the kind of things you learn the more experience that you have. So I created the G method. It's basically everything I knew about doubles, but modified for the level of play. Because what happened, I was started teaching in Connecticut. I was director of tennis at a club, and I would have the members come to me and say, well, I was getting lessons from, Joe, and he said A, and then I was getting lessons from, Peter, and he said B. Which one is it? I'm like, well, let's think about that. So we all kind of got together and started discussing these things. And I didn't like what I was hearing. It's like they were not. Oopsie, did I just lose you?
No.
Oh, sorry. My computer went away. Sorry. So we were not on the same page, and I was pretty adamant that I was right, because I really was born with this innate ability to understand the game of doubles. Like I was in the when I was 12, I was in the Puerto Rico National Championship in the adult division in doubles, and I won
Wow.
a junior national championship in doubles. I mean, I always understood the court. I understood the geometry of the court and what's high percentage and what's not. I had some really good coaches helping me along the way. So that's what I created. You know, we would have these discussions, and then I kind of in the end would say, okay, this is high percentage, this is not. So this is what you're going to cover in this situation, and you're not going to cover this one. So this is what I created. And it's a little controversial, I think, because I don't teach players to follow the ball, because we all follow the ball. High level pros follow the ball. We know where to stop. We know you don't continue following the ball into the alley. But recreational players, when you teach recreational players to follow the ball, half the time they're standing in their alley and they're covering the lowest percentage shot in tennis, which is a downline shot into an alley that's coming off a cross court ball, right? Changing the direction of the ball, trying to hit down the line is the hardest shot in tennis. So yeah, and you know, some lob theories too. Like we had some discrepancies about. I think pros make a mistake a lot. You know, teaching pros like us, sometimes we want to teach what we do, or we teach how we think the game should be played, but not understanding necessarily the level of the player. Like a very common mistake I see when players get lobbed, that everybody's taught to switch, because that's what they see the pros do. You switch and pros stay. Like I never switched and went back when the lob went over me, because I knew that my partner was going to go chase that ball and hit a great shot. But generally speaking, recreational players, when the lob goes over a recreational player and the other one's chasing it, what's coming back is another lob, 99 out of 100 times, right? So I'm telling you, you don't want to be in the net when somebody's seeing an overhead. Like I could reflex an overhead bag, no problem, from a woman, not from in mixed doubles, maybe a different story. But so I'm very adamant about teaching players when they get lobbed, they should back up.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, I've been traveling for 10 years teaching at clubs, and it's not an automatic. It's always like people don't know that. They think they have to just switch and go to the other side and stay there, and then
horizontally,
they get killed with the next ball. So and then also understanding the formations. You either one up, one back, two up, or two back. There's no other possible formation, and you and your opponents are one or the other, and which is the advantageous position. So if everybody's one up, one back, nobody has the advantage, right? If everybody's at the net, nobody has the advantage. But if we get two up against one up, one back, we know that statistically the two up is going to win the majority of the points. So working to get into that position is also good strategy. And when players get stuck in the cross court rally, I always say, listen, you're a few steps and one shot away from putting your team in the best position in doubles and putting them in the worst position in doubles. So get to the net. When they like the baseline, I say, okay, well, here's the stat on tour in the Australian Open, and I don't know what year the stat is from. Maybe it might be a little dated now, 4 or 5 years old, but still applies. Of all the points that were played in doubled in this one particular US Open, or Australian Open, I think it was 2022 maybe, or 2021, of all of those points that were played, do you know what percentage of the points were won by the baseliner? Do you guys know this stat? What do you think?
Less than 25%.
Less than 25. What else? Okay, that was Craig, what do you think?
I'm gonna leave it up to you guys. Go ahead. I want to listen.
I'll go. Okay, I'll go for 20.
20. Tarun.
17.5.
You're both way off. Come on, Craig, give me a number. Way less.
Yeah. I say like 9%.
Okay, it's 3%.
What?
Right? Wow. 3 out of 100 shots from a pro standing in the baseline is a winner. All right, 3. The other 37% of the points are won by the net player, their partner, and 60% of the points end in an error.
Wow.
So the mentality of the doubles player when they're standing in the baseline is not how do I win this point, but how do I set up my partner, or more importantly, how do I try to draw the error from the opponent? And that's a mind shift, because most people, when they play doubles, they think they have to win the point.
Yeah.
And really, you only have to win the point if you're standing on top of the net. That's your job, to put it away. But if you're just playing a point, you're not trying to win the point. You're trying to draw the error. Right?
Yes.
So Gigi, when you describe, if I'm correct in my Gigi method history, hopefully I am, your 2 up versus the 1 up, 1 back is even better than the 2 up versus 2 back, right? Because you believe
it's better for the 2 up.
Yeah.
Well, it's better for
Right.
either,
Yeah,
right?
for
It's better
sure.
for the two back.
But
You're better off in
yes,
two back. Yes.
but
Yeah.
and for unified defense, but you call the 2-up versus the 1-up, 1-back. That's the holy
The
grail
Holy
of
Grail, and the other
doubles
one's the
position,
highway to
right?
hell.
Yeah.
I just gave it. I
Yeah,
just
that's
gave
what you
it
call
I
it.
numbers.
love that term.
Yes.
I
Yeah,
just
highway
cleared
to
names.
yeah.
But then I did a clinic in Utah, and I said that, and it was all
Yeah,
Mormons, and I'm like, oh shit, I'm sorry, I should have said that.
That's hilarious.
I know.
that is
It's all
great.
good. Yeah.
And just real quick, 1-minute item on why that 1-up and 1-back is so unfortunate against the 2-up. It's the angles, the
Okay,
geometry that you talked about.
so
Give
pros are
the club players like 30 seconds of that.
yeah, that's a really good question. So, and on the pro tour, it's okay for me to be the sole baseline, my partner to be at the net, because what I'm trying to do is set my partner up to poach a volley. All right, and pros are very good at hitting the ball down. And then doubles is a game of high-low, right? I mean, you have to hit the ball down so they can hit it up to you. As soon as you hit it up, they're going to hit it down to you. You're dead. So, what recreational players are not good at that. They're not good at constantly dipping the ball and making sure the volleys are below the level of the net. So, if you're the sole baseliner or the sole net player, and your partner hits any high ball, it's coming to you, and they don't have the reactions to reflex that volley off a volley quickly. So, so in that case, I tell the player, if you are stuck at the net, stand in the service line, like hold the back position of the poaching triangle. Like don't stand in the middle of the box, because you have even less time to react. So that's why I encourage the two back. Like I said, it's better to be two back than 2-up, because you can play defense, like you said, together. And not in this staggered formation. Many Grand Slams have been won by two players playing from the baseline, especially recently, because if your ground strokes are better than their volleys, this might actually be the advantageous position for your team. It depends on everybody else. But as soon as one person goes off, you've just put your team in the worst position in doubles.
I think Kyrgios and Kokkinakis won the Australian Open doubles. A lot of
playing
time
two back.
two back.
Yeah, believe it. And a lot of French Opens.
Yeah.
Been one like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gigi, I will kind of segue with one of my favorite questions to ask. So you've been a super high level player and a coach. So do you believe in this notion of labeling players as clutch versus choke? Sometimes players are labeled as saying that, oh, when the stakes are high, they are just on it. Or some people,
absolutely.
Or they describe people as saying that, oh, this person has lost it.
Pressure
points.
I mean, I don't think it's
this,
my opinion or your opinion or somebody's opinion. Like you can look at a player's performance and make a determination. I mean, some people just were amazing under pressure. Like, Roger, prime example. The guy he wasn't even, you couldn't even tell he was stressed out. I mean, he was just cool as a cucumber. Chris Evert also comes to mind. And some people were just more unhinged, like Martina Navratilova comes to mind, super mentally tough, but she had to work on it. For her, it was not natural. And then there were players who would choke, like Jana Novotná. I mean, she would just find a way to lose a match. And there were many players in my generation that I knew, if I just hit the ball over and then hit one more time, they were eventually going to do something really dumb and just give it away. So I think it's the nature of tennis. Some people are just going to play great under pressure, and those are the people who are, in the Hall of Fame. And some people are going to struggle with the mental part of the game and are going to have shorter careers and are not going to be as successful. To me, in the end, talent, there's lots of talent, and what separates the goods from the greats is the ability to perform your best tennis under pressure.
I completely agree.
Totally, yeah.
Building on that, would you say that it is possible to really make a lot of change in that? So let's say you're number 70 in the world, but you're struggling, or you're not 90 or, around 100, but you're struggling with like getting to the last few rounds of the slams.
Absolutely. I mean, I did it. Like I was a basket case. I used to break rackets, and I used to pay my fines to the WTA before the year started, because I knew I was going to get fined. I mean, I broke more rackets. I used to break 100 rackets a year. I was just a temperamental hothead until I learned these mental skills. How to control my thoughts. It's what it is. It boils down to like controlling your thoughts. And I had all these kind of tactics that I used to sort of trick my brain into thinking what I wanted it to think. which we'll
And
get
then
into in a minute. When you ask me
uh,
the question about the hack, because I know you're going to ask that question, and these were hacks, so I'm going to save it for that.
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
practicing how you want to think, right? But
Yeah.
I'll leave it to the next
Yeah.
question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Gigi, we had you spoke about your doubles partners and doubles over the years and stuff like that. So I had a really interesting question amongst us, at least we were discussing offline, that want to know from you at least how the game of doubles has evolved over time, like from
Mm,
when you played till then the early 2000s to now.
yeah.
How has it evolved? So I have
Mm.
a two-part question. One is that has it evolved over time, in your opinion? And secondly, what I'm very curious about is, when you select a doubles partner, whether it's at club level or at pro level, like what are the criterias? Is it your chemistry off court? Is it the trust that you have
Yeah.
over the years and experience? I
Good
just want to know,
questions.
like, how do you go ahead and pick that doubles partner that you're
Yeah.
comfortable with? Is it the side that they prefer returning from? So
Yeah.
there you go.
Okay. So the first part, how the game has evolved. I mean, unfortunately, the technology has
Mm.
basically eliminated the game of doubles in a way. I mean, what you see
Yeah.
now on tour is really singles play on the doubles court. All
Hmm.
creativity and finesse and stop making and angles and all that has gone by the wayside. It's just power, 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 power. Like you can hit the ball harder and in my generation, people hit the ball hard, really hard, almost as hard as they do now. Because I retired at the beginning of Venus and Serena, so '95, I think Venus turned pro. I was '97. Korniakova, Davenport, Capriati, Celis hit the crap out of the ball, just almost as hard as they hit it now, but they didn't hit hard with spin. It's flat, right? What they do now is they hit hard with spin because of the technology of the strings. So when doesn't matter where you're standing at the net, I could be 3 feet from the net. I'm still hitting the ball from the bottom from my shoe tops, and that's just really hard to be good at doubles
Yeah.
when you're constantly hitting the ball below the
Yeah.
level of the net.
Mm.
So to me, technology ruined, I guess, for lack of a better term, traditional doubles. But I tell recreational players listening or whenever I'm talking about this to not watch the pros play doubles and think that that's how you need to play because they don't have these strokes, right? They don't have
Yeah.
this ability to hit the ball down. So anybody below a 4.5, 4, etc. down, should still be playing the traditional doubles like it was played in the 90s and
Mm.
2000s, where or even before that, where getting to the net is what's going to win most of the matches. And then the second part of the question, which is how you pick a partner. So I have kind of a standard
Mm.
answer for this, or what I know from years of experience, is that opposites attract, right? You're looking for somebody who complements your weaknesses and your strengths, and also from the emotional side. Like if you're emotional and temperamental, you want somebody who's steady. That's our Mary Jo and I were a good partnership, and Natasha also, because she was very steady and I was kind of doing this. If you have a good forehand, you want somebody with a good backhand. If you have a big serve, you want somebody with good returns. If you if you're an aggressive person, you want the setter. If you haven't, finish at the net, you have to have the setter at the baseline.
Mm.
You
It's
want.
brilliant. Yeah.
But Natasha was a consistent returner. I was more flashy with my returns, so they were always in, but I had the more up and down returns, and when I was on, they were great. But she was the steady one, right? And yeah, so that's kind of how. And of course, you have to have chemistry, and it's hard to measure chemistry because you don't really know if you have chemistry with someone until you get on the court and try it.
Right.
But if you play with somebody you like, and if you play somebody that complements your weaknesses and is opposite of you, I think that's a pretty good start.
Mm.
It's pretty good.
That's wonderful. Tarun, I know you're eager to ask the question about what do you hack? I had a very short question, Gigi,
Yeah.
about where do you see the future of doubles in terms of mixed women's tennis? Because
Yeah, I
whenever
don't
you
know. Like
switch
I'm
on the
really,
telly, they're
yeah,
always showing like singles. So I just want to hear
yeah,
from
I'm a little worried about it, especially what the
Yeah.
USTA has done with the mixed doubles trophy. For the people listening who don't know, the mixed doubles championships at the US Open this year is I mean, for lack of a better term, it's an exhibition because it's a 2-day event. I believe it's Wednesday and Thursday of qualifying, and it's 4 game sets.
Fast
So
4.
4 game sets, fast 4. Yep. And it's 16 teams, 2 days. So you play round of 16 quarters one day, and then semis and finals the next day. All matches are on Arthur Ashe and Louis Armstrong. And the selection committee is picking the players based on singles ranking and marketability, right? So I don't know if whoever wins this, I'm in the board of the Hall of Fame, and we're already having these discussions about, well, does this actually count towards Hall of Fame status? If you win a mixed doubles or a Grand Slam, at this particular one, like, is this even winning a Grand Slam? I don't know. I mean, they're making $1 million, which is crazy, but so I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. Hopefully, it stays around.
Hope so, yeah.
Because that's what everybody plays.
Yes, indeed.
So.
Yep. All right. So, Gigi, on to my favorite question. So, tennis hackery has the word hack in the name. So, what I really want to ask is, what have you hacked either on the court, maybe something that helped you figured something out on the fly that helped you turn around a match, or even off the court, maybe something, you solved a problem and you found a solution that helped turn things around.
So I had all these mental hacks, I guess you'd call them, when I was playing. And I'll mention a few of them. One thing I used to do this called reversing the score. Like, I always revert the score in my head. Most people struggle with break points. It's just natural to feel a little more tense when you're the returner on the outside and you have a break point. So I used to reverse the score in my head. I would think, okay, I got to make this return, otherwise I'm going to lose the serve. That worked. I had this, what I called my happy place. And for me, my happy place was, I grew up in Puerto Rico, and my parents had a boat, and we used to go to the Virgin Islands on the long weekends. And we used to come home on Sunday, and the sun would be setting over Puerto Rico, and I could see I could close my eyes and see the skyline, or the island, and the sun setting behind it. And I'm sitting on the front of the boat, and the wind is blowing in my face, and I'm getting suntan, and just like a peaceful moment. And everybody's different. Some people love the mountains, but everybody should find this place where they feel this peace and this serenity. And I would just close my eyes on the changeovers and pretend I was there. I would close my eyes before important points, important returns, and just pretend I was in Puerto Rico in the Caribbean, and the breeze. And immediately your heart rate will stop and will slow down. Breathing from the diaphragm is very important. If you learn how to take deep breaths, you breathe in you use your entire lungs, and then you breathe out, you're making a Darth Vader sound, like it's called Ujjayi breath for those of you who do yoga. And learn how to take deep breaths. And by deep, I mean take 2 breaths in a minute. So in 15, 20 seconds, out 15, 20 seconds. It's very hard to do. And when you do it at first, you might get in 5, out 5, but over time you learn how to really fully fill your lungs. That gets the blood flow flowing better. It helps with lactic acid buildup. It lowers your blood pressure. It lowers your heart rate. There's all these physical benefits to learning how to control your heart rate, and you do it through breathing. So those are, I think, 3 things that I did when I was playing that really helped me stay calm, cool, and collected under pressure, so I could hit the best shots when the pressure was at the highest.
That's awesome.
Super helpful. Thank you.
I loved it.
Thank you for that.
And then when you said, have you hacked anything? Like, where I went to was like, have I ever like crashed a place? And I actually went to Monday Night Football one time in Tampa without a ticket, and I just like crashed the place. I just like somehow got in.
Yep.
Monday Night Football without a ticket. That's not a hack. That's a crash.
Hack.
That's quite a story. Yep. Indeed.
Something like a hack. I don't know.
Yeah. So Gigi, we are nearing the end of the podcast, so I thought we will save the best for the last. I know that you've started the Gigi Foundation. I do see something called the Tennis for Hope. So would you like to elaborate more on that?
Yeah. So unfortunately, last September, my house flooded during the Florida hurricanes. I live in a 1-story house. And it was a very traumatic experience because we had 2 feet of water in the house and lost pretty much everything, 2 cars, all the furniture, everything that was touching the ground in a 1-story house. So you can imagine. Yeah. And I was going through the worst period of my life. I was depressed, and it was sort of, I mean, it was, I can't even, it was so overwhelming because you worked so hard your whole life, and you know, I was pretty comfortable life, and then all of a sudden you lose everything, and it's like, oh my God,
Yeah.
what are we gonna do? But then what came of it was, I had decided at the U.S. Open, which is only 3 weeks before, that I was gonna reestablish my foundation, and I was gonna call it Tennis for Hope. And I didn't, at this point, didn't know what it was gonna do, but I just knew that that was gonna be the name. So then this happens 3 weeks later, and I decided that I needed to help others that were less fortunate, because I was very lucky, even though obviously it was a terrible situation. And to walk out your house and you see all your belongings on the lawn, waiting for the truck to come pick them all up. But I could start the rebuilding process right away because I didn't have to wait for my insurance checks. It costs $400,000 to rebuild. Most people don't have $400,000 sitting around, right? And neither did I. But I could, hit my retirement accounts and figure out how to start this process so that I could, get my life back in order. And eventually, fortunately, insurance kicked in, and everything worked out okay for me. But I know that most people were not as lucky as I was. And and of course, in these type of catastrophes, you need millions of dollars to help people. But I just felt the need to do something. And then lo and behold, a couple months later, the Florida fires hit. And I was like, okay, this is why at this point we hadn't really gotten going too much, because I'm still dealing with the recovery of my house, which was literally a full-time job for about 2 months. If you wanted it to get it done, I mean, I had to be here every day on top of the contractors, and because there were so many people in the same boat and so many people trying to rebuild. So I started this foundation and started asking. I have a great following. I have throughout my years of doing Gigi method camps and clinics, I have a lot of people that I have called friends now, because they've come to multiple camps, become my friends, and people that I really love and respect, and started reaching out to them, and put together a great board of very smart people that have great vision for the company. And we've raised we have a membership model, so you can join the foundation as a member, and it's a 3-year commitment starting at $1,000 or $5,000 or $10,000. And there's, we'll do fun things. We'll have a member events. We have our first one at Indian Wells next year, where we're going to go play tennis and go to the matches. And then you get discounts to Gigi Fernandez tennis events. And we've raised over $100,000 times with a 3-year commitment. So we're at about $300,000 right now in just 6 months. So, and even less than that, because it took a couple months to get our 501c3 status, which is our tax exempt status. We already got that, which is also, lucky, because it can take years for this to happen. And we got a special exemption because of need, because of, the situation. So I spent a lot of time on that now, and trying to raise money for people. We donated, we've committed $35,000 to LA Relief. The Palisades Tennis Club was a club that I was one of the first clubs that I did one of my Gigi method clinics at, and it burned down. So called the director. So our model is, when a disaster strikes, we call the USDA section of wherever this happened. So we call the USDA Southern Cal, and we're like, okay, what can we do? What happened? And that's how I found out that the Pacific Palisades Center was down. And so we've been kind of doing that as and raising money and giving it away. So that's what we're doing.
That's amazing.
So if anybody wants to
Excellent.
join, tennisforhope.org.
Yes.
And it's $1,000 to become a member, but we can take any donation of any size. It's just not part of the membership model. If you want to donate $50 or $100, every little bit counts.
We would love to, as Tennis Hackery, to donate, and also for such a special cause for you and your foundation. And
Thank you.
of course, would love to collaborate with you in anything that can help the disadvantaged or any situations, for sure.
Thank you. Thanks for that. I mean, like 4 or 5 years ago, 2018, I was in Diablo, and there's some fires there. So you guys get fires up there.
We do.
Hopefully,
We do.
Yeah. So hopefully I don't have to make that phone call to you guys in the future. But
Yeah.
it's kind of scary, and natural disasters are going to keep happening. And like I said, we're trying to unify the tennis community, and and helping people affected by natural disasters. Because right now, when something happens, whether it's the tsunamis in Japan or the fires in LA, like it's not unified. Like everybody starts sending money, but nobody's like taking charge of the effort from the tennis world. So that's sort of our goal. That's our aim, to unify the tennis community and leading the effort to helping people affected by natural disasters.
Thank you for doing it. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much. This is
Thank
amazing.
you. Well, thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
It's been an amazing privilege, Gigi. Like not often that we get to rub shoulders with somebody of your stature and the tennis resume.
Thank you. I
for sure.
appreciate it. Yeah. So my two websites, gigifernandeztennis.com, and all my fun things are there. It do camps at Indian Wells every year, and we have a camp at the Virgin Islands in December. And then, of course, tennisforhope.org are the two things that if anybody wants to support, would be greatly appreciated.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
With that, we come to the end of the episode number 28, Gigi Fernandez. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye,
you.
guys.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.